Hello, and welcome to Michell Consulting's webinar series for Michell University. Today we're going to be working with Infor FACTS, and we're going to be talking about how to streamline the sales order process. So let's look at some of the options we can do in order to make it more efficient to enter orders. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the sales orders, and let's look at actual order and see what we're talking about. We're going to see here when we're looking at a sales order, we can see that we have some options on the screen. For example, here we're looking at the customer, the document number. We're looking at the ship to, the reference, the ship via, the contact, and so on. And down here in the line items, we're looking at specific items. We can look here. Let's call up an order, and let's go in and take a look at some of the other information. So you can see here, if we go to the header, we have header information. If we go to line detail, we have line detail information, and so on. So let's talk about how to add and take things off these menus, again, to streamline. You can see here we have options and so on. So we're going to exit this for now. And in sales order, we're going to go into file maintenance, the infrequent file maintenance, and here we're going to look at the SO entry options. Now, the document type we can choose. We have orders, invoices, when we're doing our confirmation, we're doing credit memos, counter sales, and quotes. For the purposes of this webinar, we're going to just work with the order entry, but it holds true for all the documents. So we're going to select order entry. And here we have some information. So on our header screen, we have some various fields here and some options we can choose. We can set to edit. This means that when we tab through or enter through, our cursor will go into the field. We can edit or change the information. We can set a field to skip. That means is that as we tab through or go through, we'll skip over that, but we can actually go back and into the field, by taking the mouse and going back and changing into it. We can do a back into, which is if we tab over, we can control tab and go back in. And finally, we can disable. And we'll look at some of the screens that we have here and what we're going to work with. So here we have, again, the different varieties, the initiating warehouse, the reference, and so on. So let's take a look at these, how they work with the corresponding required amounts. So you can see here that we have the initiating warehouse is on the header, and we can see here that is not a requirement. The default is the requirement. So we can see that we have it set to no. We can make it yes, which means is that it's required for us to enter information, order us to finish the order, and we can also put it on the screen. So we can see that the initiating warehouse is not on the screen, and the reference is on the screen. So let's go back to the order. And you can see that the reference is on the screen, and the initiating warehouse is not on the screen. Go back in. So we're going to go here, and we're going to say that the initiating warehouse, we want it on the screen, and we're going to take the reference off the screen. Let's save that. Go back into our order entry. You can see now we have the initiating warehouse is on the screen. The other information is still available in the header. So if I was to go in and select and choose my header option, I I still have my reference, my initiating warehouse. I have all the information here. I have it set up in edit mode. You're always going to have the information on the header. The difference is by saying yes to the screen, you can put it on the screen. So depending on your business flow, if you need to access the initiating warehouse constantly, you maybe want to put it on the screen. You can always reference a field. So for example, we can go into header. Maybe we don't have to access the reference so much. We can do it here. So let's go out. Let's go back to our infrequent file maintenance. And we'll put our entry options. So again, we're working with this one here. So again, we can see in our header that we have the initiating warehouse. So we're going to go here and we're going to put that back to no. We're going to put our reference back to screen. And we can see the difference for requirements. So we can do that with all these. Again, we have the information here. So what we can do is we can have a freight code. If we set this, so for example, let's say the ship via or the department, if we skip this, let's see what happens. So we're going to save that. We go back into our order entry. Call up an order. So you can see here now we're in the system. So as we tab through, you can see how we skipped. And we can back into the information this way. So if we tab, we're skipping over, we're going down. If we back into it by using F4, we have the option to go back in. So if we tab, we skip, and we can F4 back into it. So again, we can set that up. Let's look at a couple other things. Let's go back in. So again, we see in our header information, we can set all these. We can set it to edit, to skip, back into, and we can completely disable, to skip over. So this is our main header information. We have a second header screen here, again, that we can set things up. These are all set to skip. We have our lines. Now, on our lines, we have the same information that we can go in and we can make it, we can edit it, we can skip it, we can back into it, we can disable it. We can also do something else on here. We can go here, our required changes a little bit. We can go and we can say that this field is not required. So again, we can finish the order without going into the field. We can actually put it on the menu, and you'll see in the drop-down, we're going to put the cost on the menu. We can also set it in additional fields. We can use set 1, it'll be the first in the field, set 2 would be the second, and set 3 would be the third. So let's leave it as it is. Let's exit, go into orders. And you can see here on our options, we have some drop-downs. And we do not see the cost here. We want to add that cost to the menu just to make it easier to go through. So we're going to go to the cost. Back into that. We're going to put it on the menu. I'm going to save it, exit, go back into orders, order entry. Now under option, we now see the cost. So we've added it to the menu here. Let's go back. Actually, before we do that, let me show you this. Let's go into the order. Let's select our order. Here we're going to edit the line. And we see right now when we edit the line, we get the standard fields that are displaying on the screen here, as well as our pop-ups. We have price, option, and the warehouse quantities. Let's go in, go out of here. Okay. Go back into file maintenance, infrequent file maintenance, SO entry options. Let's go to our line. Now we're going to take it off the menu and we're going to put it as set 1. We're going to make it the first. And we're going to go here and we're going to put this as a set 2. Let's save it. Go back into orders. And again, we do no longer see it in the menus. We added it into the line item. So we're going to call up our order again. We're going to select the line. We're going to click edit the line. And now we see our 2 fields. We see the unit cost as set 1 and the GM percent as set 2. Again, the original stuff that we see will come over on the screen and so on. Let's turn that around. So let's go back in. Again, let's go into order entry. Let's look at the lines. And we had cost and percentage, so we can go, we can make this the second one. We can make this the first one. So now we'll see the GM percent and then the cost. We save, exit, go back into orders. Let's call up the order. Let's edit the line. And again, you can see how we change that. So the order entry, the options allow us to be very flexible in setting up our facts, depending on how we want to do business. This allows us to streamline the order entry to get the information in faster. So let's go back and look at some other things we have. And we're just going to exit this order. We're going to go back to infrequent file maintenance. And we're going to look at the SO entry options file maintenance. Let's just go into orders. Let's look at the lines, and let's just put this back to not required. So you have the ability of doing all of these. So you have all your descriptions, your ship completes, you have information for temporary vendors. Everything related to the line item details is here. You also have your footer information. So here we're going to, again, be able to edit the memos, the discounts, rate codes, etc. You have your header options. So what's happening here is the prompt customer balance is coming up, the credit limit's coming up, and you can see the warehouse prompts are coming up. You also have the line options. And again, here we see some stuff that comes up. We have a line option. We have the option of viewing the direct information for drop shipments. We have the committed options. We have the on order, the warehouse, the quotes, the substitutes, and the past sales as our options. We're also looking at the price levels we want. We're looking at the price search and so on. We have all this information available. Here we have some options, suggest PO transfers by type. So for suggested PO, we can always ask defaulting to restock path. We can always create a suggested PO, so we can set it so we don't have to prompt the question. We can always create based on the restocking path. We can always ask defaulting for suggested POs, and we can never create. And again, we have some more information here for the standard parts for an item units of measure. We have our totals. Okay, we are displaying the weights here. We're not displaying the total cost and so on. We can look at our stocking units. We have our flags. So we're looking at our flagging if they're back orders, direct ship, temporary, and so on. And we have our notes. We can set up that in the case of customers, only notes marked as urgent come up. We can have all notes or no notes coming up at all. So let's look at some of the options. So we saw the options here in our lines and our footers. Let's look at some line options. We have this information turned on. You can see on it, we're going to display total cost. We can add this. And we can see we have our flags turned on in our notes. So let's save this. Let's go back into sales order entry. Let's create a new order, and we'll see the information. We're going to bring up this information. We're editing the ship to warehouse. You can see the reference is not required, so we can skip over it. We set that as not being required. We can enter our item. You can see here what we're popping up. We said for our windows, we're popping up our warehouse quantities. We're going to put a quantity of 10. Again, we have our field, so we're going into the committed. We're going to based on the warehouse quantities. We can see here the pricing options we opened up. And we can see how we flagged all the pricing levels to come up. When we click done, we can see again on our footer information, we gave access to the memos. We give access to the freight. And we can click OK. And we're done. So let's review that for a minute, where we go, and allow us to streamline our orders. And as we know that these can be done for order entry, as you saw the other options, they could be done for quotations during order confirmation. They could be done in direct ship. So what we do is in sales order, we go to file maintenance, in frequent file maintenance, and here we have our sales order entry options file maintenance. So we can click here, and again, we can see the document types. We can do orders, we can do direct invoices, we can do confirmations, credit memos, counter sales, and quote entries. We can see our header information. This is the information that is in when we go to the bottom of the sales order and open up the main header screen. We have options. You can see how we have it set to edit, which means as we tab through, we'll be in the field. We can make changes to the field. We can skip it, which means we will tab past it, but we can take our mouse and go back and click on it. We can back into it, which means we'll skip it, and then if we use the F4 function key, we can back into it, or we can completely disable the field, so nothing can be entered. So again, you see all your information here. As far as the requirement side, you have 3 options. Here you can, by default, it's no, which means it's going to be on the header, but it's not required for you to do anything in it. So in this case, the initial warehouse, we have it as edit yes and no, which means we can edit if we want, but we're not required to enter anything. You can set yes for the requirement. That means that you have to enter information in that field, so we may want to set a reference to required or a freight code to required. One of these, like for example, we'll do a salesperson territory. We'll put a yes there. And then you have the screen option. The screen option will actually put it on the main screen, the main order entry screen, so you don't have to open up the header. Again, you can do it with split commission, terms code. We have all these fields available. We have additional header screens. We have our lines and the same principle. We can make the fields we can edit. We can skip. It means when we we'll tab over it. We can still use our arrow and go into it with our mouse and change it. We can back into it, which means we'll skip, and we can F4 back into it, or we completely disable. And on these, you have a couple options. You can put things on the menu, on the option drop-down menu, or you can set the order you want those within the lines. We have our footer information. And again, you notice we had the memo set to edit, so it gives the ability of editing all that. We have our header options. So we're going to prompt the customer balance, prompt the credit limit. In the warehouse prompt, we're going to prompt the aging options and the quote options. We have our line options. Again, you can see the information that comes up. When we enter the line, we saw the price search pop up. We saw the gross margin display in the warning. We saw our levels of pricing. We saw here our options for warehousing, and all this information is in the line options, and how we want to handle our suggested POs and transfers. We have our totals, what totals we want to display on the system. We have our flags. If we want to flag back order, flag it as direct ship, so on, we can set that. We can flag if we have flag below GP, and if we fall below GP, we can enter these flags. And we have our notes. So we can see that. We can see where we made a change here, and we made the salesperson territory required yes. Let's save that. Let's exit. Go back into order entry. Let's create an order. Again, we're going to go put our customer in. Again, we can go through. Now we can see that as I tab through, the salesperson came up because we said that was a required field. We can set fields to be required. And if we go to the header information, we can see all the information on the header, and we can see everything here. We can look at the codes. Again, our salesperson is required, so if we try to take that out, we're going to get the information here. We can see that on the line items. You can see the box that popped up here. Again, you can see the pricing information coming up that we requested. And then when we're done, we can look at our footer information. Again, we can see we have access to this. We can also see here on our options menu, we can see that we left the gross profit percentage on the option menu here. We have it here. So to recap what we've gone over today, we've looked at the entry options for our quotations, our orders, our invoicing, our order confirmations, etc. We went into file maintenance and frequent file maintenance and our SO entry options file maintenance. So in here, we have the option on our document type. We can do it with order entries. We can do it with direct invoices. We're doing confirmations, credit memos, counter sales, and quotes. Again, you have the option of making the field where you can go in and to edit it. You can skip it. You can back into it. You can disable it. You can put certain fields on the main screen, again, to streamline your process. Let's say that we always have to enter a reference. We want to put that on the screen. But these other fields that are not required, and we don't actually change those. We just let the defaults coming through. So there's no reason to put all this on the screen. The only thing we have on the main screen is going to be the reference, the ship via, and the contact. That's what we require to enter on every order. What we want to enter on every order. We have our line information. Again, the same principle. If we want the option to edit the committed backs, a lot of people, what they do here is they have the order entry. The order quantity is editing, and these, they just back into it. They let the system determine the information. So again, we speed up our process in the sales order entry. We can do the same thing with cost. We can put the back into it. We can make it a required. We can put it on the menu like you saw, or we can actually set up the 3 in the order we want them. So we can set options that come up in the line details. We have the same with our footer information. We can prompt if we want to edit, to skip, to back into, and to disable. We have additional header options. So in this case, we want to prompt the customer balance, prompt the credit limits. We want to prompt the warehouse like we saw, the agings, and so on. We have the line options. Again, if we want to see pricing comes up, all the levels of pricing we want to see. We want to see options for substitute parts and so on can come up. We can also determine how we want to handle our suggested POs and transfers. We can decide what we want to see on the total information as well as the units we want to see. We can set flag information. We can flag certain things. Again, depending on how we do our business, we can also look at the notes. We can always have the notes pop up. We can only have urgent notes pop up and do not have the notes pop up. So that concludes today's webinar for Infor FACTS for streamlining the sales order process. Once again, these webinars are part of our Michell University. They're being recorded. Will be available on our website. You can visit us at www.mitchellgroup.com. Thank you.